Sure. Well, my name, David Smolansky. I'm from Venezuela. Before coming to SAIS, I was working at the Organization of American States. Still work there. I am the Special Envoy of the Secretary General to address the Venezuelan migration and refugee crisis in the region, which unfortunately has become the largest in the world. 7.1 million Venezuelans have fled the country, including me, due to the brutal dictatorship that Venezuela have been facing during more than 2 decades. And before the Organization of American States, I was a visiting scholar at Georgetown. That was my first year in exile, which I'm grateful of the opportunity that Georgetown provided me in that moment, because I was able to do research on migration and security, and that's how I got involved more on the Venezuelan migration and refugee crisis. That's when I started to do field visits in the region. And before that, well, I was a mayor of El Latillo district. That's one of the 5 districts of Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. I was elected in 2013. I was, at the moment, the youngest mayor, in Venezuela. I was elected with 28 years old. And we had a great team that we were able to decrease kidnapping more than 80%, which was something unique by the moment, being Venezuela one of the most violent countries in the world. And El Latillo specifically was the district with the highest kidnapping rate per capita in Venezuela, one of the highest in Latin America. So we were successful tackling kidnapping, and also we were recognized by International Transparency as one of the most transparent local governments in Venezuela. But I was an opposition leader, so I was always very active and outspoken against Maduro's regime. Basically, I had colleagues that were illegally detained. The Secretary General of my political party was illegally detained. Other mayors were arbitrarily detained. Many students were illegally detained. So I participated, and I was one of the leaders that called for nonviolent protest while I was mayor in 2014, in 2016, in 2017. And in that year, in 2017, Maduro illegally removed me from office, issued an arrest warrant against me, and disqualified me for any public role in Venezuela. So I was forced to be in hiding for 35 days until I fled Venezuela through a jungle when I got to Brazil. And then after I spent a few days in Brazil and my exile became public, I came to the US with no expectations, to be honest, just to see what happens. A very good friend of mine that has lived in Washington for more than a decade just told me, I have a couch, you have a place to sleep, because I know you're alone, your family is still there, come to my house. And that's when my exile started. And well, it started in that couch, thinking of what to do. Then came Georgetown, then the OES, and now I'm happy to be at SAIS, doing MIPP and learning a lot from what I'm reading, learning a lot from my colleagues, as where they're my classmates, and also sharing my experience. What is to come from a country that there's no rule of law, there's no democracy, there's no freedom, and it's having so many challenges that I think Venezuelans cannot solve alone, that we need an international community to be more proactive on the restoration of democracy in Venezuela. Well, so many people ask me, why are you doing SAIS after your experience? MIPP asks you to have 7 years of experience, so it's not anyone with those years of experience could do it. And still, sometimes it's a question that I don't have an answer. I'm very open on that. I just want to be a statement for my country, probably be prepared by the moment to rebuild Venezuela. I want to be one of the leaders that could go back and rebuild my country. That's definitely a dream, and I could say an ambition with humble, an ambition that I have, because there's so much suffering, and I don't want to see my people suffering more. Second, I wanted to have a global thinking. I think that's one of the most important things that SAIS provide. You just have a global thinking, just to be on Monday discussing something in Singapore, and then on Tuesday you have something that happened in Europe, and you are discussing that, and then you have something that happened in Latin America, and you discuss that, and then you have a class that you talk about energy, and then you talk about climate, and then you could talk about security. So that global thinking, I think on my political formation, my political education it is very important. And at the same time, is also to redefine Venezuela. We've been under the dictatorship for 23 years. We have tried so many things to restore democracy: elections, negotiations, referendums, non-violent protests, and we have not been able to restore democracy because, in my opinion, we're facing literally a drug cartel who's running the country. They're not politicians, they're not diplomats. So there's issues. I think that Venezuela cannot be ignored geopolitically. So there are issues that need to be thought regarding Venezuela, things related to energy, things related to climate change, things related on women leadership, things related to public services, infrastructure, security, such an important issue in Venezuela, for me the main challenge. So, well, this is an opportunity also to redefine my country, so that is why many of the papers I have written on Venezuela, but with a different approach that probably I was used to it. So, yeah, that's what I came. It's just an anecdote. I came to this city 11 years ago for work. And a friend of mine, this friend that I offered his couch, his house when I came, he just moved here to this city, and he was doing a master at Georgetown, but he was living very, very close to Johns Hopkins, to SAIS. And one day I just woke up, and that morning I had a kind of fever in the morning, and I entered to the NITSE building. That was 2011. 2012 was that, 2012, 10 years ago. I remember perfectly, October 2012. And I entered to the NITSE building, and I said to my girlfriend that moment, I said to her, to Marisela, I'm going to study here one day. And she was so happy when that happened, because she was a witness on that moment. And when I got the approval, the admission to be here, and then the fellow, I told her, well, we are here. So yes, it is very interesting after you're having experience to go back to university. I haven't been in an academic experience like this, as long as this, for the last 10 years. I have had some short experiences academically talking, but not as long as to do a master for a year. And it's very interesting when you can share your experience, but at the same time listen to others. That's one of the things that I'm also learning the most, try to listen. Sometimes politicians have a problem that we don't listen enough of the people, and I'm totally focused on listening to everyone in this university, more specifically people younger than me. People are 23, 25, 27, how they're seeing the world, how they see Venezuela, which are the challenges that they see. So it's been fascinating. I want to have this time as slow as possible, because it goes so fast. Well, I'm still working at the Organization of American States, so my plan is to continue there, because there's a huge responsibility to address the biggest migration and refugee crisis in the world that is going on in Latin America and the Caribbean, and I'm very grateful on the Secretary General Luis Almagro, who also recommended me to do this master, but that he has trusted me on having this responsibility as his Special Envoy. So my plan is to keep that job, to improve the life of so many that have been forced to flee. But of course, in the future, I want to go back. And everything that I do in my exile is, one, to restore democracy in Venezuela, and two, to rebuild Venezuela. So definitely, my plan is to be one of the leaders that will rebuild Venezuela. Definitely. That's what I want. As I said, it's an ambition in a humble way, and it's a dream at the same time. I haven't been in my country for 5 years. My parents are there, friends are there. If I go back right now with the dictatorship, I'll be in jail immediately. I have a prison assigned to me in the biggest torture center in Latin America. So obviously I cannot take a plane to Venezuela because I will be immediately illegally detained. But as soon as democracy is restored, I want to be one of the leaders that will rebuild Venezuela, and I want to provide opportunities for the next generation of Venezuelans that probably didn't have, or the majority of Venezuelans didn't have, which someone could say, well, you are in SAIS, or you had the opportunity to go to university in Venezuela. Yes, and I'm so grateful on that, especially for the support that my parents have provided me. But I haven't lived in a country with democracy. I haven't lived in a country with freedom. I haven't lived in a country with rule of law, with opportunities. I haven't lived in a country that you can just go out at night and feel safe. Just go out at night and feel safe. That you say, well, you could be murdered, or you could be kidnapped. So I want to provide safety and provide democracy and a rule of law and freedom to the next generations. So those are my plans. You just want to be a public servant for my country, and destiny will say what is the role that I will have when that time comes. Yes, of course. Any time that I publish a report, or especially my tweets, which are sometimes very hard, it could be a reaction from the regime against my parents, but it's a concern, but I have had their support. That's amazing. They are very brave. They are so courageous, and sometimes I just always joke to them and say, well, this is your fault that I'm like this, because since I was a child, they were always very, encouraging on getting involved on the situations that were going on in my country, and getting involved on international issues. So that's all the thing that I'm very happy to be at SAIS, just to study international relations formally for the first time in my life, because I think what I have learned about international relations has been by myself, or with the exception of some short academic experiences, like I did one in Georgetown and one at Stanford, but just formally study international relations, it's a dream come true, to be honest for me, and I'm learning a lot. It's a risk that I have, but they're fine, they're okay. They are healthy, which I think is the most important thing in the world right now, and I'm sure that I'm gonna see them soon in my country. Yeah.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. The message that I want to also give on this interview is that SAIS is not only about classes; it's also about what is happening outside classrooms, right? So you have so many great experiences, events, conference, forums, this type of volunteering. And that's when you build your network, and that's also a way to learn. In class, I have enjoyed a lot of writing papers again, especially in English. It's the first time that I'm doing so many papers in English. Yes, so I am the Special Envoy of the Secretary General to address the Venezuelan migration and refugee crisis. This is a special office that he created in 2018 when basically the outflow just increased a lot. So I have 3 mandates. One is to promote policies to protect and integrate Venezuelan migrants and refugees in the whole region. And we have published almost 15 reports recommending policies to governments in the region. Second is to register testimonies on the field, but we have done it also virtually due to COVID-19, of victims of the dictatorship that have been forced to flee. And this is something challenging because it's easy to explain, of course, not underestimating what's going on there, all my solidarity. But when there is an armed conflict like the one Syria has gone for more than a decade, or when there is an invasion like Russia has done in Ukraine, it's easy to explain to the world why so many people have fled those nations. In the case of Venezuela, where we have not had a conventional war, but the catastrophe that we are going through in Venezuela, humanitarian, economically, socially, on migration, are only compared to nations that are in war. We have to work way more to explain how is that Venezuela 7 million people have fled. If there's no invasion, there's no armed conflict, there's no natural catastrophe. So one of my mandates is to interview migrants and refugees and use those testimonies as evidence of people or the determinants of people fleeing the country, right? And then it's tracking the crisis, the outflow. So every 3 months approximately, we update, the outflow. So yeah, it's after COVID-19, we haven't this in the region anymore. But before COVID-19, I went to 11 countries in the whole region, with like 18 visits in 11 countries. We went to Colombia, we went to Ecuador, we went to Chile, to Bolivia, to Brazil, to Argentina, to Costa Rica. We went to some cities here in the U.S. where there are plenty of Venezuelans, like in Florida and Texas, in Houston more specifically. So went to Aruba, to Curacao, so to Peru. So on those countries, we met with Venezuelan migrants and refugees. We met also with other agencies, more specifically UN, IOM, UNHCR. We also meet with the local authorities. We meet with civil society groups, and of course we meet with the government, right? To the different level. So sometimes I have had the opportunity just to be in the same table with the president and discuss with that president, which are the best policies for Venezuelans, or with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or yeah. So that's actually my first report that I presented at the Organization of American States was in front of almost every Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latin America and the Caribbean. That was my first experience. So yes, that's part of my job. Yeah, yeah.